Just as I put you on, the rooster goes.
Hey, good. Good morning.
That was Randy. He was saying good morning to you.
He's probably a political animal also.
He is a political, and you know what? It's a great political animal show. We're all political animals this morning.
Yeah. Well, good morning. Good morning to all our viewers and fellow patriots and fellow freedom fighters and fellow want to expose what's behind the curtain every single day followers and viewers that we have. I'm glad they're with us.
And he's just gonna sit under my window and do this the whole podcast.
And Jenny's actual political animals she's got outside.
That's correct. That's so funny. I don't even know why he hasn't even been coming into the yard lately. And now that, we're going to do a podcast, he's going to sit right under my window and comment the entire time.
Yeah.
So, hello, everybody. His name's Randy. Just get used to him. He'll move on in a minute. It's actually probably pretty good because of the fact that, we're talking about property rights and property and that kind of thing. There's my property sitting right out there chatting with us. Beck 682 says, good morning, guys. Good morning, Beck 682. Nice to see you this morning.
Right.
Have a great audience on Rumble this morning. So anything before we bring on our political animal friend?
Yeah. Well, just in just a kind of in the theme of today's show, I just want to show something.
Okay.
So we're running into a problem here where this is the percentage of government spending as a percentage of GDP. So our gross domestic product, which should be all our manufacturing, our business, all the output that we have. That's one of the things that made us great in the past was we were, a strong middle class, strong producing country, ethic of people.
Right.
Now, the government expenditure, the government percentage of our GDP, which our GDP is, 25 trillion or so. So yeah, it's going up because our money's not worth as much, but our percentage now is, let me make that a little bit bigger. The US here is 36.25%. So the government is an entire one third of the spending on our GDP. So they have no problem spending our money on all this, whatever they deem, but they are 1/3. We'll just say they're 1/3 of our economy. So when you're looking at all your retirement stuff, you're rich on paper, your IRAs, your 401ks, 1/3 of that is just complete government spending, and it's probably
complete BS.
yeah. In one way or another. I mean, in one way or another, it's all just smoke and mirrors. So when you look at all these jobs reports, you look at all this stuff, you hear all this news, oh, we're so great, our economy is so good. Well, if you have a government that can print unlimited amounts of money and pay themselves with that money in order to produce business, you run into the same thing as, I mean, what do you call that? It's kind of communist. That's like what China did. That's why China is literally, their economy is just going like this, because they have all those ghost cities. They have all these fake numbers because they falsely propped up all their stuff.
Yeah.
So they're running into some serious issues over there, which they don't really talk about here now.
We know what's interesting.
We're going down the same path. We're going down the same path. That's what I was going to say.
Well, you know, what's interesting is you bring that up beneficially, you know, in what we're going to talk about right now, because what we're going to talk about right now has everything to do with the federal government.
Yeah.
And the federal government giving money to private companies. We call those tax incentives, right? And you and I have never been tax incentive people. Hate those, as a matter of fact, because it's not for it. And then you have Oklahoma's governor, and you have Oklahoma's legislature who are freely happy to dole out those, you know, tax credits. And then they say, oh, free enterprise. Yeah, free enterprise. And you're like, at what point is tax incentives? What point is that free enterprise? Because now you've just said, I'm taking company B, infusing it with some cash, but company A over here doesn't have any cash. And they're just like, what? And so this company gets bigger with the infusions of cash, and this company loses market share because they don't have that infusion of taxpayer cash. So let's make sure that we're covering that.
Yeah.
Taxpayer cash. So so what you've said is beautiful. It's brilliant, because it brings right into the forefront what we're going to talk about today. Let me, in order to then build on what you said, I would like to put this up for people to see. So give me just a second. We all know how proficient I am at doing the whole bringing things in. So give me a second. All right, here we go.
And just to dovetail on what you said, you know, if you don't think business is highly political, especially in today's time, it is, because the government can pick winners and losers. They can do things for you that will hurt your competition over time, and that's just how it is.
So this is, and I know I kind of felt bad about it, but I didn't know another way to fix this. So I AI'd this photo that it works. An open letter to Governor Stitt in the Oklahoma legislature from a third generation Oklahoma farm owner. This is up on the blog, so I would ask you to go and read it. I think you're going to enjoy, but I'm going to read it. It's not very long, so I'm just going to read it to you because I think it's important to read to you before we talk about what we're talking about. Because what I would like you to do is, after you've seen this whole video and you've asked your questions and done, you know, wherever you need to be with that, I would like you to take a copy of this, take the URL, and send it to your legislator. Take the copy, the URL of this letter, and send it to your legislator. Okay. Dear Governor Stitt and esteemed Oklahoma State legislators, in light of the current federal administration's ambitious goal of achieving 100% renewable energy production by 2035 to combat climate change, it is imperative to address the risks and challenges posed by the rapid expansion of wind and solar energy sources within our state. While Oklahoma meets and surpasses the current federal mandate of 30% renewable energy production, boasting renewable production at 47%, we must consider that Oklahoma produces 61% more energy than it consumes. This raises a critical question. Why are we allocating significant taxpayer funds to allow external investors to acquire vast tracts of Oklahoma land for a product that we're already overproducing? A pressing concern lies in our dependence on global supply chains, particularly from countries like China, for components required to manufacture wind turbines and solar panels. This reliance exposes our energy sector to significant vulnerabilities, making it susceptible to disruptions stemming from geopolitical transitions and trade disputes. To ensure the security and reliability of our energy grid, we must advocate for diversified sourcing strategies that reduce our dependence on specific suppliers or regions. Moreover, the inherent intermittency of wind and solar energy generation poses substantial challenges to grid stability as these sources fluctuate based on weather conditions and time of day. It's essential that we prioritize the implementation of energy storage solutions and demand response measures to effectively manage these fluctuations and uphold grid reliability. To safeguard our energy security, we must embrace a diversified energy mix that includes not only renewables, but also natural gas, hydro, clean coal, and potentially nuclear energy. I urge you to draft legislation to implement a statewide moratorium on any new renewable energy projects. Such a strategic pause would provide us with the opportunity to conduct a comprehensive review of our existing energy portfolio, identify vulnerabilities, and develop a robust energy strategy that prioritizes security, resilience, and sustainability. In conclusion, let's approach this critical issue with the wisdom and foresight Oklahomans expect from our esteemed legislative body. By instituting a statewide moratorium on renewable energy projects and reevaluating Oklahoma's energy strategy, we can pave the way for a more secure, reliable, and environmentally responsible energy landscape that protects the best interests of our citizens and future generations. Thank you for your attention to this matter. Respectfully, Dorn J. Weaver II. I thought that was a brilliant letter.
Yeah.
I really, really did. I thought he did an absolutely phenomenal job. I'm going to pull this up again so you can look. This is this is the title of it. You can find it right on our blog. I put it up this morning. I just adjure you to, especially after you hear what Saundra and we talk about today, I really, really would like to make sure that you find this and send it to your legislators.
Yeah.
So,
well, and I want to make one more little comment, about one thing he was saying in there. They did that. They've done multiple studies in Congress now about actually shielding and protecting our grid in general, which they will not in any way pass like the $3 or $4 billion that it would take to completely shield our entire electric grid here. Yet they want to spend billions and billions and hundreds of billions of dollars on all these things. They will not shield the grid. I mean, that has been an issue for 20 plus years, ever since they did that study. And that we've mentioned that book by William Forstchen, like 1 second after, even though it's a fictional piece, it's based on all that prior research that has been done. And at some point, there is going to be some type of electromagnetic pulse. There's going to be some type of attack, whatever, on the grid. I mean, it's going to happen at some point. It's like the Carrington event from the late 1800s, that EMP from the sun that literally melted down all the telegraph lines. I mean, that stuff is going to come in at some point sooner or later. And just to boldly not shield the grid is just insane, in my opinion.
So Lisa says, if Oklahoma alone produces 61% more energy than we use, there's absolutely no reason at all for us to use any foreign energy or oil. I'm stating the blatantly obvious for those who missed that short mention there. But that's absolutely, it's absolutely the case. Let me bring in Saundra. Saundra, you ready? Bringing in Saundra. Good morning, Saundra.
Good morning.
My political animal. My little political animal.
You activated me, so it's your fault.
I still think that's so funny. For those of you who don't know, Saundra and I have been friends for a long time because we did homeschool together, her kids and my kids, and we were always, in a homeschool setting. And this was even back in the days when I was still working on Common Core. And, I was always this, kind of, and I think I always thought, Saundra, you were like, oh, for Pete's sakes. And now you're worse than me.
Yeah, that's true. Not worse, but maybe getting up there with you, maybe.
I don't know, but you're getting close. All right. So we're going to talk about something, and I want you to start out by saying this, because I know we talk to so many people who say, but I don't know what I can do because I'm just one little person and I'm not an expert. I don't know anything about this. Well, when I asked Saundra to come on, because she found this, when she was searching out some other things, she found it and started reading about it and started posting all over everywhere. Oh my gosh, you guys got to pay attention to this. You're not an expert on this, right?
No, not at all. Not at all.
But that's okay, because what we do is we find the stuff, get it out there, and we all learn about it, right? So you don't have to be an expert. You just have to be able to read.
Right. Yeah. And this morning, I really didn't want to come on this podcast.
I'm like, sorry.
I don't want to do this. I don't feel like I'm equipped. And I opened up to the passage in Ezekiel about being the watchman on the wall. And it's our job to tell people, and what they do with it is up to them. But, it's our job and it's our responsibility. If we know about something, we have to put it out there and let people do what they're going to do. If they want to defend their property and their rights, or if they're going to sit back and take it, that's on them. But if we alert them and we do our part, they can dig into this further. There are other people that are pushing back, and I'm so proud of them in Logan County and elsewhere. But until people realize, like we did initially with the humaner, until it's at your door and you say, hey, I'm had enough of this. And what can I do? And it might not be, we thought it'd be real easy to take it to the state and that they would pay attention. And then you start to realize the corruption, and then you have to start to act on all of those levels, which is not what anyone wants to do. But,
but you made a great point, because like you said, you tried to handle this on your own. And, just like so many of us have gotten nowhere. And that's why we have to be a group. And I was dying laughing because one's against the wall. I can't figure out exactly what said. Raise your hand if you got activated by Jenny.
There's a lot of us.
Dying laughing. I'm like, click. Anyway, I think you make a super point, and it's what I wanted you to say without, writing it down for you. We have to be in this together. None of us are experts. We're all learning this together. But if we're waiting for the experts, it's going to be, I did a 30-minute live video on an expert in education, Corey DeAngelis, who has just been outed as a former gay porn star. And I did 30 minutes live on my Facebook page and got the biggest live viewership I've ever had, I think, because people are starting to get, who are the experts?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, seriously, who are these people? So wait, legislators, you're expecting me, who's got a wind farm in my backyard and human manure getting delivered over to the neighborhood next to me. Somebody else is an expert on this?
Right.
Stop. I cry crap on that. That's just absolutely not true. It's, I mean, that's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. It's insane. But,
we're the experts.
Yeah, we're the experts. I saw a funny little ad, and it had somebody advertising a pillow or something. And on the bottom of the screen, it said expert. I was like, I just want that. Can you change my name to expert? I'm going to be the expert. But, I realized we know more about this because we've looked into it than the majority of people. And so right now we are the expert. And when you start to watch these Senate committee meetings and you hear what they have to say about these things, these bills that they're pushing,
Yeah.
and you realize they don't have a clue what they're even, the bill they supposedly wrote.
Yeah.
And when they sit there and then they go, oh, I'm sorry, I'm on the wrong bill, and laugh about it because they don't have a clue what's in the bill that they supposedly wrote. And I mean, I've heard him say, is this a request bill? And the other legislator said, well, yeah, my constituent requested it. And they all kind of chuckled awkwardly because what they really mean is, did this department or this department or this department request this bill? And if they did, then we won't even read it. We'll just pass it. And so they're no longer listening to the people.
Yeah.
They're listening to these agencies and they're doing what they're asking them to do. And that is really disturbing. And, you know, that's why some of these races that are happening right now are so critical, because we're the political animals that are paying attention. And Stitt can call us names and all he wants, but we're not going to sit back and be silent anymore. And we're taking things back. This is our state, not theirs.
Well, I want to build on something that you just said, and I know we need to get into the transmission thing, but I think it's important to really kind of jam this down the viewers' throats while we have so many of them out there watching right now. And that is, we remember the "we'll have to pass it to see what's in it" Nancy Pelosi comment. Remember that one? The healthcare bill. Well, we'll have to pass it to see what's in it. She was a Democrat. Everybody was like it. And it became this political thing. Well, the Democrats want you to. How many Republicans are sitting in our state offices downtown, doing the same thing?
Exactly.
It's not partisan. It's all, what do we call it, Michael? Uniparty?
Yeah.
I can't hear you. You pushed your button on your mic.
Oh, yeah. Well, look at your school board members, Jenny. Exact same thing. Look at your city councils. Exact same thing. You just have a bunch of glad hand people in there, happy to just do whatever they're told to do, and they're just happy to just be sitting there for their 1 hour of fame.
Yeah. I mean, it's Stephanie says the same thing. Uniparty for sure. It is. So for those of you who are still somehow in this mindset of Republicans are great, we're a red state, stop doing that.
Right. Yeah.
It doesn't make any difference. I mean, so long as they're getting what they want, it doesn't matter who's red and who's blue. It just doesn't matter. So anyway, all right. So I want you to start telling us, what did you find? Give us kind of a little background on what we're going to talk about right now.
Right. So initially I got started on fighting wind turbines in Kansas when they targeted my family farm and my community there. And through that fight, we started a Facebook group there, and we started to follow, different legislators in Kansas. And one of them, Representative Carrie Barth, she's excellent. And so, I just happened to see a post from her, and I believe it was shared into that No Wind Turbine group. And she was talking about this 5-mile wide transmission corridor, and that there was a very small window to do public comment. And this was right at the time that we go back to Kansas and help my parents cut wheat. And I'm like, I don't have time for this, But I looked into it, and the public comment period was still, I believe, June 24th. And so, between driving trucks, I'm like, I got to do a quick post, because in Oklahoma, it's up to, the Delta Plains portion, there's 2 chunks in Oklahoma. Delta Plains portion is 4 to 18 miles wide and 645 miles long. And so that goes all the way across Oklahoma from the Panhandle all the way over to Arkansas and into Arkansas. So the majority of it is the 18-mile. So now I sent you, right. So they're talking about federally eminent domaining this chunk of land, which total for that whole big map is up to 103 million acres across the U.S., which is about 5% of U.S. land mass, which is huge. So we're talking about farmland. We're talking about, all of these. I mean, this is going over some of our towns. And, when I first shared it, I got a lot of pushback and people saying, oh no, it's really not going to be 18 miles wide, which in the Panhandle, then it's a different one. And they call that, I believe, the Plains Southwest corridor, and it's 5 to 100 miles wide. So the Panhandle between these two corridors looks like it's about 2/3 gone.
Okay, well, I think
it's
there's
just a big red swath.
All right, we'll go back and look at some of this stuff here in just a second, but there's the map. All right, there's the map. So you've got this, and you can't see my pointer, so there's no way to do that, unfortunately. I wish there was like a pointer. I need to suggest that. StreamYard, are you listening? Oh no, Saundra. This is what happens when you live out in the boonies. You're oh no, she's gonna have to get back in. Okay, in the meantime, while she's doing this, so this is a slide taken from the actual, these are where the transmission lines are going to be, all the things in the orange part. And if you'll see, it says, what is it? Potential, I guess. New York, New England, New York, Mid-Atlantic, Canada, Mid-Atlantic, Midwest, Plains, Midwest Plains, Northern Plains, Delta Plains, Plains Southwest, Plains, Mountain Plains Southwest, Mountains Northwest. I mean, seriously. And what they're talking about is all of those are going to look like this. This is what everything's going to look like. It's these giant transmission lines. I was trying to see if Saundra was dialing back in or something. It's these giant transmission lines, and the whole plant, and Stephanie says this is no good for people, plants, or our wildlife. And it's absolutely not. And I know Saundra knows a lot more about this than I do, because I just flat have not looked at this very well yet. And maybe Stephanie, you know more about it since you're on, and you can kind of collaborate with us here a second. But there's an electric field. So help me, all of you who are on here. There's an electric field that gets put out by the transmission lines, because what's going through the transmission lines is so heavily electrified. It's such a huge, is it watts?
Voltage and amperage.
Amperage. Thank you. There's so much amperage in it that it can cause, well, like Stephanie says here, look into dairy farm. There she is. Is she back?
Yeah,
she's back.
So.
Yeah.
What happened to you? Did they knock you off?
I guess they're after me. I don't know. I thought you guys were gone. I was like, what happened? So I'm on my phone now. So hopefully this works. That was crazy. Sorry.
Yeah, that's okay. I mean, everybody who watches this knows that we live out in the boonies, and you get what you get with broadband, and that's what we get. So I'm glad you just were able to get back on. Okay, so we were having this discussion while you were gone about, and Stephanie says, you can look at the effects of smart meters. So Saundra, you've done a lot more research on the effects of transmission lines and the off-throwing of electromagnetic radiation from these than I have.
Yeah.
Commentary here. I mean, why we don't want these things, because we don't want our land usurped, obviously, right. But there are other reasons why.
Yeah, cancers, all kinds of other issues that happen with this. And I mean, even, with the wind turbines and the electric currents, they're finding that dairy cattle aren't producing milk. They're, just basically failure to thrive. They've even seen the current. I saw that sorry, my daughter's diabetes alarm is going to go off because she's not within range of my phone. So that's why. Anyway,
that's okay.
Yeah. Speaking of health effects, why are our children all sick? Like, this is one of the reasons that we are so passionate about this, because I have 2 children now with chronic childhood illness, never seen before in our family. So what are these environmental factors that are playing a role in all of this that we can't get away from. And so, electromagnetic frequencies and diabetes, that's a really big deal. They've even created in the lab diabetic rats from different frequencies.
Stephanie says Maha. What's that? Okay. Well, Stephanie, you're going to have to let us both know.
Well, I'll bring up something real quick here, Jenny.
Okay.
This is a book I got a long time ago. It's Dirty Electricity. I would advise everybody to go get this book and look at it. This is a scientist that he saw just through the occupational side of exposure in electricity to some of these higher voltage lines, things like that. Just a mirage of just disease and just barrage of all this stuff. Anyway, that is a fantastic book on this subject, and it doesn't take that long to read. I would advise everybody to go get that.
Yeah.
Stephanie's laughing at me because she's like, make America healthy again.
Gotcha. Yes. Yeah.
Sorry, Stephanie.
Yeah. Which Kennedy. Yeah, that's a good one. Sorry.
Yeah.
More coffee.
But
yeah, they've even seen like the baby cows were not nursing, and at night they could see the electrical current between them when they try to go nurse and their mother. And so they're getting shocked. But there's all the health effects. But once we get past the fact that we've never seen anything like this before, I think that's one of the things that people are struggling with is they're looking at that map, the US map. And I emailed you another map. I got it from a DA in Kansas, and they're fighting it there. I haven't published it because if you want to go live with it, you can, but I'm not sharing this link with anyone, because what tends to happen is people zoom in on this map and they say, well, I'm not in the corridor, and then they don't care anymore. So I want people to not have access to this in the fact that I want them all to be activated and turned into political animals. But at the same time, that map, when you zoom in and you see Stroud to Tulsa, are completely gone. And that's alarming. And so once people see that all red and start to go, what does this really mean for Oklahoma? And why hasn't our state stood up against this? Missouri, U.S. Senator Josh Hawley, he has Senate Bill 4348, which is protecting our farmers from the Green New Deal Act, specifically about this. Where are Oklahomans? There's less in Kansas and Missouri that's going to be taken than Oklahoma, and it's crickets over here.
Yeah, and I don't know how to explain that, because the only thing is, like, there's a guy who's on Rumble this morning, could be, I don't know. Eminent domain means money for somebody else, que bono. So, I do think, because some of you guys over in Lincoln County literally traced the money from the windmill people right back to Kevin Wallace's campaign account.
Mm-hmm.
So, if these legislators are getting kickbacks into their accounts by these people, I don't know how. Lots of things die for the love of money. And I think what's happening now more than ever before is that the love of their constituency is dying over the love of their love of money.
Right.
And we just have a bunch of legislators who are happy to take money from these people. And it's always irritated me, because I've had several lawmakers independently, when I say things about, taking money, this and that. Well, I don't know what goes into my account. Okay, you didn't just stop. You didn't just give me your excuse for taking this money is because of the fact that you don't know that the money's in, you don't know who gave it to you. And then the second, and I'm going to follow up, the second is, well, just because I get money from somebody doesn't mean that I'm going to do what they ask.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, hold on just 1 second. So if you get the money from somebody who then is doing something in your constituency's area that your constituency doesn't want. 2 and 2 make 4.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I don't know how people are so, I don't know if it's, I remember when I first started going to the legislature, and there was this sense of kind of awe and, oh my gosh, these people are elected to be here, and I'm just this person. And we get this notion that somehow these people are better than us, and they're not.
Mm-hmm.
In many ways, they're not even half as good, some of them. So we've got to quit putting these people on a pedestal and realizing that we elect them to work for us. So guess what? I'm not trying to be narcissistic, just saying, in our way of government, it all comes back to me.
Mm-hmm.
You're the boss, Jenny.
That's right.
But I do want to make a point though to something that Saundra said about that map and people thinking, you know, well, I zoom in there. It's not for me. Let me tell you something. Like, look at this picture here. Once these things go up, they're never coming down. This is going to be part of the federal infrastructure of the United States, and there's no reason not to expand. Okay. Mm-hmm. It may not be over your place now, but there's no reason 10 or 15 years from now, they're not going to expand this massively because they've laid the groundwork to have it out there now. So once these things go up, they're never coming down. I just want to make that point.
Yeah. Well, and we have to get past thinking that they want what's best for us.
Yeah.
I mean, they don't want this to be livable. They don't want us to live in these areas. They want us to live in their cities, and that's it. And, you know, Oklahoma, there's been moments when I've thought, okay, I see this map. I see the carbon capture map. Nobody else, and people have said, well, you live in the corridor. I don't live in this corridor. I don't live in the wind turbine area, but I care because this affects all of us. And so once we start to look at it and go, okay, what is the logistics of having the majority of the United States energy coming from these certain areas? And how easy would it be for an enemy to take this out? Yeah. And completely cripple us? I mean, that doesn't seem like a very smart plan. And I mean, plus just a weather event, a tornado could go through this and completely wipe out our energy infrastructure. And that this is for AI. This is not to save the world. This is because we need more and more power to power AI. And so people think, oh, this is going to power my home. No, this is for AI. And so what we're trying to do here is not even, they're brainwashing us into thinking this is to save the world. This is to power AI. And some people say, put it on your house, put solar on your house. No, this is causing human slavery around the world. You know, the mining, all of the things. This is not good for the planet. Not at all.
Yeah. Well, and I think people don't understand that there was something just I wish I could think of. It was, I think, a Daily Oklahoman article, and they were touting that windmill blades were going to this one place to die or something. And I was like, we're happy about this. They don't recycle, you know, it's not like they go into the ground. It's not like something like that goes back to the earth. It just doesn't work. Denise says ASL has developed a strategy to defeat the NIETCs in their coordination guide. Get this guide. Hey, we need to do that. 18 Oklahoma counties and 38 cities are affected. More than 7 million acres, like you said, will be affected worldwide. We need to get that. Hey, Denise, can you send that to me? Because I'm pretty sure you have my email address. If you can't put it on Messenger, but send that to me so I can stick it in the newsletter for this week. Thank you very much.
It's 7 million acres, just the Delta Plains corridor. It's 103 million acres in the U.S. So I can't talk about that. Sorry. It's insane. And that's the thing. Like, it's so insane that I don't think people can grasp it. And so one guy that worked in the energy sector, he just blasted me and he said, no, this is just, they're just drawing a big line now and they'll narrow it down to be your typical transmission line corridor, which,
And I have a bridge that I'm willing to sell you in New York.
right. Yeah. I mean, when does the federal government ever take less than they want, But if you look at what the line they drew on the East Coast and the West Coast, it's like 0.3 miles wide, and it's very specific exactly where they want to go. There's a lot more population there. So if they needed to put a big wide line with their Sharpie, and just so they'd have a place to go and make sure they missed your grandpa's barn, why didn't they do that on the coast, on those corridors? Why did they do that across Oklahoma, 18 miles wide? Because it sure seems like they had a much more area to draw that little narrow line and not freak out all of these people that potentially we're going to have something that looks like this picture, line after
Well,
line.
and here's the thing. I mean, the bottom line is, I mean, she just a friend of Lisa's just moved to Missouri.
Well,
and yeah, so that's the thing. Anybody who's watching this, who's in that, I mean, that corridor, we've got to get activated. We've got to start. Oh, and I've got to say this before I forget about it. This is in the Corporation Commission's lap. So when we've talked before about wind turbines and solar and that kind of thing, and we've talked about going to the county commissioners, right, and our city councils, this particular thing, energy transmission lines, fall in the lap of the Corporation Commission. And I don't know if you've been paying attention, but there's been quite a bit of I mean, how do you even talk about this stuff? It's just crazy. So Todd Hyatt has been accused of, he's a corporation commissioner, has been accused of all kinds of stuff. And the crazy thing is anymore, you're like, if you're over the target, they'll get you. But then sometimes you're just not a great person and you make mistakes like everybody else, and then they come get you. So, I mean, it's so hard to know who to trust or what's going on. But the Corporation Commission is kind of in a pickle right now. And we've got to start going to these meetings, I think, and sitting down and talking to these people about what's going on. The lady who shared with me this webinar, Slide Stack, has sent a letter to the Corporation Commission here in Oklahoma, and they're aware of this. And I think we just need to completely keep banging on that door. And Stephanie says this is why it's important to vote no on 833. And I keep putting that aside and going, I'll get to that. But that is a state question coming up on our November 5th ballot. And it is one that we need to know about. And Michael, we do need to make a mental note here, pretty quickly with the election right around the corner, to talk to people about that and update them. But I do know it's a no. I just can't explain to you why it's a no right now, just because of the fact, it's a constitutional change, Stephanie says. And we don't like the Constitution. Some constitutional changes. There are several constitutional changes actually I'd like to make. Some of them have to do with the state election board.
Well, if I could say something in the vein of the experts, where if we don't go talk to, like, this is going back into these Corporation Commission meetings and things like that. If we don't go talk to these people, if we don't show up, guess who shows up? Guess who the only person is they're getting information from? The government expert, the state expert, the transmission line expert, the corporation expert that's wanting to put this in. They're not hearing from anyone else. So if we don't go, that's the only side they're ever going to get.
Right. And I think it's important that, this Senator Josh Hawley, he's putting in legislation that if there's state pushback against eminent domain, that they can't just roll over a state. Well, what pushback does Oklahoma have? Because one thing I'm seeing from Kansas where they are pushing back is the DOE is saying, well, these lines aren't exact and we might change those, narrow those, maybe even get rid of some of these. Well, the first one they're going to get rid of, if they get rid of any, are going to be the ones that threw the biggest fit.
Yeah.
And right now, they're not seeing any fit throwing from Oklahoma, certainly not from our legislators. So they don't see anything wrong with plowing over Oklahomans. And during that public comment period, there was nothing from us. I think a few people saw my posts and probably sent in public comment.
I did.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, and so there were a few, but very few people even knew about it. And you know, why isn't this all over the news? This is huge. This is a huge news story. Why aren't they telling us about this? And there are some legislation that has been pushed this last session, basically paving the way for transmission line corridors.
So what did Stephanie say? Let's all read it together.
Yeah.
Our legislators are not on our team.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. And so if they're putting out legislation, and then when we do go to them, they'll say, oh, we're sorry, we can't push back on this because we happen to have passed this other bill that says that they can do this. And they're absolutely doing that. That's something we witnessed ourselves with our milk. I mean, I couldn't believe it that our state just rolls over because we're in their pocket, and that's what's happening.
Well, and their excuse always is, one of them anyway, well, it's a federal thing. We can't do anything about the feds.
Right.
And I can't tell you the number of times that I've literally, I just feel like my head is going to just go, boom, and here's the thing. We have 50 states, 55 if you're Obama, 50 states. And of all of those states, we all are supposed to be individual states. We only have to obey the feds in just a minuscule number of areas. It's not education policy. It's not necessarily energy policy. I mean, and the only time it would be that would be very small parameters. So we've got to get our legislators into the notion and thinking in terms of the notion that the Constitution is a real thing. That it's not just somebody's pie in the sky theory about how it's a real thing. And the Constitution says we have the 10th Amendment. Anything not reserved to federal powers are reserved to the states. That's essentially what the 10th Amendment says. We've got to start saying to our legislators over and over and over again. And those of you who are watching, if you're not sure about that, go look it up to make sure you understand that, because you need to stand right in front of your legislator and go, no, you're not telling me about the federal government anything. I cry bull crap on that. I'm exerting the 10th Amendment. You exert the 10th Amendment. Let's make this stop. So this idea that somehow we can't do anything because, well, it's a federal program or it's a federal blah or whatever, bull crap on that. No, we have the 10th Amendment. And that's what we need to stand on. And that's what we need to get our legislators to stand on. Stop doing this.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry.
Absolutely. Agreed.
I had to have my little, freak out here.
Right. And I also think it's important, this is supposed to be a green energy corridor. So when you start to add up all of these different things, why is Oklahoma this huge swath of a green energy corridor? Right now, what we see as far as wind turbines and solar in Oklahoma isn't really that. I mean, it's way too much for my taste, but it's not necessary to put in an 18-mile wide corridor to take that amount of energy elsewhere, not for us. But I would really encourage everyone to just do a Google search, your county, the names of these big green energy companies, and some keywords. So, okay, so let's say Wagner County, NextEra, solar. See what comes up. Because now there's one planned for Wagner. And then you can look up your county and look up solar, look up wind turbines, look up renewables and Nextera, Enel, Evernergy, these keywords, and start seeing from their own websites. Because in Oklahoma, we don't have any real that they have to let us know that they're even planning these projects until they're about ready to start construction. They've already signed up all your neighbors for leases and they're getting ready to go. So by the time you figure it out, it's too late to do anything about it.
And that is a really excellent point. And I think the other point that I was going to try to make in here is all you have to do, like Saundra says, is web search this for yourself. And here's what you're going to find out. I always say the Obama administration, because really is well, do we even know who really is running our country right now anyway? I mean, do we have an administration? I'm just curious. But it all started with Obama. I mean, absolutely did. So basically the Obama administration pushed the green energy thing. Oh, bummer. That's right. Pushed the green energy thing. And then what he ended up, does anybody remember Solyndra? Mm-hmm. Anybody remember Solyndra? So Solyndra was one of the big things under the Obama presidency. He gave, it was all done by executive order because we don't have a Congress. They're really not worth anything. So long as you're president, you get to do what you want. So he gave a bunch of taxpayer dollars to this California private company called Solyndra. And am I wrong?
$535 million to be exact, Jenny.
Michael, wasn't our own Tulsa, wasn't Kaiser involved in that? Because Kaiser and Obama are buddies,
Yeah.
and I think George Kaiser was involved in that, but I may be wrong. He's involved in plenty. Anyway, so he gave him $585 million. Is that what you said, Michael?
Yeah. 535.
Okay. And so then what ended up happening was Solyndra, which was a solar car company or solar battery.
Oh, hang on. George Kaiser was the largest shareholder in Solyndra.
Yeah, I was pretty sure that was the case. Yeah. I mean, and you've got to remember, and we've talked about this before, and don't forget, Julianne Romanello, we had that great podcast where she talked about all of the nonprofit organizations and how they've come in and changing. Oh, I'm sorry, Lisa. It was solar batteries. Yes. How they come in and they change all of these organizations by just giving them money and then giving them the parameters for what they had to use. There it is. Yep. Nice.
He was big Obama, buddy. Just want to make sure everybody saw that for real.
And don't forget, George Kaiser is an Oklahoman, lives right outside of Tulsa, and his fingers are in every little Democrat, socialist, Marxist pot stirring it up. And so all what's happening right here, and Saundra, you can talk about this with Nextera, just like we talked about this with the Free Soil Foundation the other day. So it's all investor-driven private organizations that are collecting federal funds, which are taxpayer dollars, to do this stuff, which makes it very hard to get in between a private company, right? Mm-hmm. Which is why we've got to have our legislators on board to protect us from these private investor-led companies that are pushing this green crap. Do you know Bono is involved in this and is an investor in the company in Iowa that's trying to that the Free Soil Foundation is fighting? I mean, that's who we're dealing with here. And I don't think people understand how murky and a lot.
Yeah, you lose all transparency. There's no way to open records request or FOIA request a private organization. I mean, that's how the government has figured out with all these private contracts how to do what they want to do with no accountability. They've literally just nailed it to a T with that stuff.
But I think what's important, and it's easy to get overwhelmed. And I think that's part of why people they just shut down, because they're like, well, there's nothing we can do about this. It's federal. They're going to eminent domain it. Okay. So, but all of those pieces, the solar, the carbon capture, the wind turbines, all of that, the humaner, it all comes back to, if the farmers and the landowners said no, we would stop this in its tracks. They don't need all those transmission lines if we don't give them more green power. We stop the solar, they don't need that transmission line. We stop the wind turbines, they don't need that transmission line. All of this, we stop it. The carbon capture, all of it, we have to say no. And I mean, you can look up the hydrogen in Oklahoma, how much money. You can look at their graph that they've published on oklahoma.gov of hydrogen investment value like this. And next year, the next couple of years, it skyrockets. So how many of our legislators have invested in hydrogen? And on that map, it has a little graph, and it shows you on the Oklahoma map where all the hydrogen fueling stations will be for our vehicles across the state, and has pictures from California, literally images they took from the California website, which in California, they're discovering this isn't working and it's a big sham, and they're shutting down some of these fueling stations. And the people,
No.
I mean, yeah, but we're all in Oklahoma. We say to these people that are moving here from California, oh, don't California our Oklahoma. No, we've already done it. Our legislators are trying to do that to us. I mean, there's stuff out there already for their year, for the 50-year plan for us to drink our own pee. I mean, it's in the document. Like that's where we're going. And so, yeah.
Well, I was just going to add just one little anecdote onto that electric car that you just said. Right outside my office window, literally, I mean, I can see it right now. There is a charging station right outside my window across the street. I can't tell you how many times cars go over there and have to get towed. I mean, it's just, it is absolutely hilarious. But anyway, sorry to interject.
I mean, it's all crazy, but what comes down to, you know, whether it's the Coyote River Dam, all of this, the solar, they're trying to eminent domain some of it, but a lot of it, if the farmers truly understood, this is where I lose people. They don't understand. This is to enslave your children. They say, oh, this is for them to not have to farm and to make all this money. No, this is to enslave your children, because this is all ESG, environmental social governance. And so once you go there, they glaze over. They don't understand. I'm like, no, they don't want us to have cash. They want to track and trace us. This is all part of this. This is for AI to do that to us. And so we push back. Like Oklahoma, we have to make the choice not to love money more than the future for the next generation. And
so I'm going to build on what you said. You said that their eyes glaze over because, you know, they just don't know what to do about it. I'm going to disagree a little bit. I think that's part of the reason, but I think their eyes glaze over because they think this is Oklahoma. It's never going to happen here. That's freaking crazy. You're talking over my head. You must be some kind of a weirdo. And it's so funny because I'll be perfectly honest, like I always try to be. I was never an Alex Jones fan. And people would say to me, oh, you got to watch Alex Jones. I'm like, he's kind of a bonehead and he's weird. And I really don't want to listen to him because I don't think that I think he's just, and that's what I'm trying to say, I think, Lisa. Why do so many people stop listening when you tell them the truth about the real agenda? So I watched a part of an interview that Tucker Carlson did with Alex Jones the other day. And I did it just because I was like, I don't really like Alex Jones, but I'm dying to know, why would Tucker Carlson have on Alex Jones? Alex Jones said this in that interview. And if you want to go look it up, it's out there. You can look it up. It was Tucker Carlson interviewing Alex Jones. And Tucker says, you know, what people have called you a prophet before. You know, why would they do that? I mean, and why are you so vilified? And people think you're crazy and you say this stuff and they think you're nuts. And he said this. Yeah, they do. But I'll give you my secret. I literally go out to the United Nations website And I look through all of their white papers, and I look through all of the things that they put up there on their website, on the United Nations. It's out there. Anybody can find it. It's just that nobody goes and looks for it. I'm the weirdo that goes and looks for it. And then I read it. And then I'm like, wow, they're literally saying this. So I come out and I say this. And then it happens. And people are like, that's crazy. How did you know about this? Because I read about it on the UN website or the WEF website. And I think that's what people have got to understand. And so when Alex Jones said that, I was like, oh my gosh, now I kind of see what's going on here, because I've read some of those things myself. And it's like, Stephanie said Hunger Games playing out a minute ago. And it's kind of like that. You read that and you go, in the world of stupid, I'm not sure how you get stupider.
Yeah.
Nobody's going to do this. That's just insane. That's crazy. It's not. These people are crazy. This is what they want. This is what they believe. If you don't believe us, go out and look at their stupid stuff that they write themselves and put it up there. It's all out there.
Yeah.
Well, just to validate what Saundra said just a minute ago, look at how Congressman Steve King, at the start of our podcast, he literally said, their Agenda 2050, they're trying to actually reduce the population. That's coming from a federal congressman. It's not like we're crazy here talking about this. So, like, to Saundra's point, as you increase electricity, you can increase computing power, which is going to increase AI, which is going to increase robotics. You're replaceable. We've never been replaceable in the past. We're becoming replaceable with this advent of technology. And, when you read their white papers, just like what Alex Jones has done all these years, they literally say it. I sent a friend, WEF main bad guy. I can't even think of his Klaus.
Oh, yeah.
Klaus Schwab in his book, either his first or his second, the Fourth Turning book, or the coming in industrial revolution, the fourth industrial revolution, whatever it was. The book's kind of calm, and then as you get towards the end, it starts becoming, now you need to reduce the population. There's too many people. There's going to be hunger. There's going to be starvation. There's going to be resource management issues. So we need to reduce. That's literally what he says. Who's going to go read that book? No one, but the people that are all involved in that. That's how they communicate. Those white papers on those websites, all that obscure information that we are never going to look at, that's how they communicate out in public. That's literally what they do.
Mm-hmm. And even if we look at it, we go, because we're normal people, we look at it and go, no, that's stupid.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's
but
the thing.
Klaus Schwab says you have to eat insects and love it.
Right. And so at some point, we read of these books about World War II and things, and we think, why didn't they leave? Why didn't they get out while they still could? You see the danger coming. But I look at all these maps of all of this stuff, and I'm like, there's nowhere to go. There's nowhere to run. So once people get past that of, I'm going to go somewhere safe, there is not going to be anywhere safe. So we have to stand up against this. We all have to get together. We have to get organized, and we have got to push back. And we're going to have to go up to the Capitol. As much as I said, I'm never going back there again because it feels like a den of thieves. We have to get organized and get up there and tell them we are the ones in charge. They're the public servants, and they work for us, not for these corporations, until we do that, nothing's going to change.
No. And that's why I'm going to put out,
and pray. This is a spiritual battle for sure. We've got to pray.
No, and you're 100% right about that. And I feel bad sometimes that I don't even mention that. And that's absolutely 100% correct. But it's like we read, remember I read the Dornweaver's open letter at the beginning. Please take that down and send it to your legislators. I'm not kidding. That's why we put it up there. Because it's super easy to get. Rope2.org. How hard is that? It's not the WEF here. just rope2.org. Go
Mhm.
find it, go send it to your legislators, and, you know, become as educated as you can on this, but no, and Saundra, I know that you believe this 100%. If it's my land, I'm the expert.
Mhm.
Period. If it's my kid, I'm the expert.
Right.
It just doesn't matter. We've got to start saying, no, 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 no. This is my place. It's been in my family, like Dorn's family. I mean, his farm's been in there for 3 generations. I've
Mhm.
had this thing. It's mine. I'm the expert. If I don't want a damn windmill on it, I'm saying I don't. And I'm the expert saying, I don't really care what your
Yeah.
expert's saying. I say no.
Yeah. And we have to get back to community. And I think, it's no accident that they've isolated us so that we're not talking to our neighbors anymore. So, that's what happened in my parents' community was all of a sudden they found out that their neighbors had all been approached by this company for wind turbines. And there were still people within the community that said, no, that'll never happen here. We're way too populated. Which, when you find out that there really isn't any setback and they can put one right beside your house, I mean, 1.5 times the height of the wind turbine, I believe, is industry setback standards. And Oklahoma doesn't have any, other than to public schools, which I keep telling people this. We have a 1.5 mile setback to all public school sites. Epic is a public school, part of a public school district. Every Epic site is a public school. If your child is in Epic, however you feel about Epic, but if your child is in Epic, you get a 1.5 mile radius setback from your home. So why don't we make them enforce their own laws? And if that kills all these wind turbine projects, so be it. But this is a law
Wait,
that's on the books.
wait. You're actually implying that they care about following the law.
Right. So, at some point we might have to actually make them follow the law, which they don't even know the law, but that's their job. And
Well,
so
when you
we
get
have to
this
teach that.
many, when you get like 27 books that are this thick with laws, how do you know what law you have?
Oh, I know. Yeah. And it's referencing this book and referencing that book and referencing this book. But once we know the law, we go to the DA and we make them follow the law. That's
Yeah.
our job. And
Yeah.
so, it's not just Epic. Apparently, there are multiple different virtual schools that are all registered in our state. So all of these are public schools. And they all deserve the same. I mean, all homeschools should as well, but that's not in the book. So let's use their own. They're taking our taxpayer dollars to fund this stuff. So they're public schools. So put that in the setbacks. We just have to start
Yeah.
using the law to our advantage because these guys are.
Yeah.
And, every chink we take away, every county that fights it, whether it's solar or wind or the transmission lines, we just have to keep putting in roadblocks until we can shift this thing. And
Yeah.
so all of it goes to, we need transmission lines for the power. And if we don't have the power, we don't need the transmission lines.
Yeah.
So we cut out all of it. But yeah, it gets overwhelming. It gets frustrating. And sometimes you just want to throw up your hands and quit. But I don't want to eat bugs. There it is.
And be happy. So I want to point this out. What is a national interest electric transmission corridor? All right, so let's not forget that even though Steve King in Iowa and the carbon capture thing, there are private companies paying legislators to allow them to take land, to do the takings of land by eminent domain.
Mhm.
Most eminent domain or eminent domain as a large body of legislation or thought means that it's in somehow the state's interest, the federal government's interest. It's in the interest of the government and thereby in the interest of the people represented by the government to have X, fill in the blank. So if you'll notice, that's what this whole thing is about, national interest electric transmission corridor. So if we say that it's in the national interest, then everybody's going to just have to bow down and say, that's great. It's in the national interest. So, sure, come on and take my property by eminent domain.
Jenny, it was in the natural interest to wear a mask and get vaccinated to help your neighbor and all that too.
But I did all of that stuff because they said it was.
Sorry for the interruption.
No, I mean, good for you. Saundra, how long do you think it'll be before they change that law about Epic, though? Once they get wind of this, that's pretty good, Lisa. That law will be repealed or rescinded.
Well, that's why we have to get up there and we have to pay attention. And I think, Jenny, we need to have you do a 101, because you did this for me, how to look up legislation. I mean, you can go to legiscan.com, which I think you told me about, and you can type in the word transmission line and it'll bring up all the bills that are proposed on that. You can bring up, all those different words, just start searching and paying attention to what they're doing. And, but if we're not going to enforce the Epic, if we're not going to make them hold that, then they're not going to change it. They don't care. Yeah. But it does tell you, if there's a 1.5 mile setback to schools, that these are dangerous. These have effects. They're admitting with that law that there's a reason we shouldn't have them within 1.5 miles of a public school. And, that's these transmission line corridors. Maybe there's not going to be transmission lines on the whole 18-mile wide, but how many of these high power transmission lines are going to be putting off EMFs that are going to be dangerous? Maybe that's part of the corridor, because who can live under that? Yeah.
But I'll tell you though, Saundra, where they're going to basically cite to defeat people in that capacity is, I mean, look how they have cell phone towers literally everywhere. I mean, they've got cell phone towers on top of schools. I mean, they know these things cause issues. The FTC and some of these federal organizations, I mean, you just can't even do anything. So that's why it's so important in the very, very, very beginning to stop it before they start getting these things put in. Because like I said before, once they go in, they're never coming down. You know, they don't take those cell phone towers down on top of the schools, even though they know that it causes problems.
Yeah. And, getting past that thought that they care about you or your health, that's where we have to get people to understand they don't care. They don't care about you. They don't care about your health. They don't care about your well-being. They don't care about your children. They want you to eat bugs, and that's it. They don't want you to have.
That's why I would argue they do care. They just don't care that it's good, right? They do care. They want us to be the most unhealthy. And I was watching something RFK said on, I was on Instagram, and there was some reel with RFK, and he was talking about, and I didn't know this, that the U.S. is now the most unhealthy country in the world.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's horrible.
So they care. They care so much.
Right. But they do not want us healthy, and they do not want us thinking, and they do not want us looking at these laws and the things that they're doing. And, looking at our Oklahoma.gov and the Senate, trying to find the videos of this stuff is, I can't just share a link. It's impossible. I'm sure it went to the lowest bidder, but I also don't think they want us to be able to watch what's happening at the Capitol. And, it's like a college level course just to be able to get people to be able to see what legislation is going through and the process. And Jenny, really, that you guys do a podcast just on that, a 101. This is how you look it up, and this is how you then go cross-reference. This is a Senate committee meeting and what they said. They're talking about, why are we doing these green agenda things, and the other legislator running the legislation is saying greed. They're saying that on the Senate floor, on the committee, and nobody cares because nobody's paying attention. So they just make their silly jokes and move on with life and make a lot of money.
Well, I've had a friend of ours who has said over the years, I don't get involved in politics. You probably know who it is, Michael. And I argue it with him fairly strenuously, because I'm like, you're complaining about your property taxes. So where did that come from? If you don't get involved, it's just going to continue to be the way it is. It's not never it's not suddenly going to get better just because you sat there and went, I wish I didn't have to pay so much of property tax. It doesn't work that way.
Right.
So I have very little patience with these people who say, I don't get involved in politics. Well, you know what? When you're eating bugs, I mean, just all I can say is don't come talking to me. Don't do it. I'm not going to be interested and I'm not going to care. So none of us want to do this. Saundra, did you want to do it? I know you didn't because when I know you didn't. But now look at you.
Right. Here I am. But when you see that it's coming for you and your children, you don't have any choice. And every time y'all hear my little diabetic alarm go off, that's a reminder of why we do this, because we are the unhealthiest. We are being fed things at the grocery store it's not food. Yeah. It's not legal in other countries. And they're allowing this and promoting this. And, I just recently found out one of the diabetic sugars, alternative sugars, causes blood clots. It's known. Massive, statistically significant blood clotting from these sugars that are being sold as keto products. And they're not telling us this. And then wondering why we're all, dropping dead. So it's
well, I just watched something the other day about the fact, and I didn't even really realize this. I mean, I've heard this in different ways, but in the UK, for example, they won't let you put in some of these food additives, but then in America, we let, them put these food additives in. And I think part of the reason and the thing that I don't think people think rationally about, because they're thinking emotionally, that's stupid. That would never happen, right? That's all emotional. There's nothing rational about that. You're just reacting to something somebody said or you read or whatever. Right. But I think the thing that if you really think rationally about this, so it doesn't matter to me, you younger people, I'm just here to tell you, many years ago, the United States was the bastion of freedom for the entire world. And even though by World War II, we were already mired in our own demise, we were the ones who went in and cleaned up and paid for Japan, to get back on their feet. We're the ones who did that for Germany. America has always been the shining city on a hill, if you want to go back to Reagan, who then, took that idea from the Bible. We've always been that. Well, what country would you need to start with to just decimate, to get out of the way? America. So why do you think our kids are learning in school that America sucks? Why do you suppose? Why do you suppose we're allowing all of this disgusting, nasty food additives in our food that other countries don't even allow in? Why do you suppose that we listen to Mark Tucker and Hillary Clinton say, oh, we need to outsource all of our labor because America just needs to be, the land of the ivory tower thinkers? That's what we need to be. And so what have we done? We've offsourced so much of our trade that we have an interminable trade deficit. We have kids who can't get jobs in trades because they're looked down on, because you have to have a college degree. And why would you want to shove kids into college? Because right there in college, you're being told America is terrible. We need to elevate one color above another of people. We need to make sure that, we have people who have alternative lifestyles who are, paid more attention to. We have, it's all makes perfect sense if you just sit down quietly and think on it. It all makes perfect sense. And like Stephanie said, as America falls, the rest of the world falls. And they knew that. And so that's where we are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I could talk on that food issue probably like Saundra could for hours. Yeah. But I want to show just one little quick deal. This just shows you how connected all these bad things are with politics and the people that are in high political offices. Now, we all know, like, at this point, how bad, like, aspartame is for you. Okay. Aspartame is one of the worst. Well, you know who got aspartame all passed through the FDA and the whole 9 yards was our good old boy, Donald Rumsfeld. Donald was head of Cyril back then, got it all put in, multi millions of dollar deal all across the board. And you know how bad aspartame literally accumulates in your brain. I mean, it literally bioaccumulates in your brain. But, you know, here you got a guy connected to big pharma going through the FDA right into, you know, one of the highest positions in politics in this country. I mean, in government. I mean, give me a break. I mean, that's just one. I mean, I could do hundreds and hundreds of those.
Yeah. Yeah. It's disturbing when you look at it from all the different aspects. That
the Bush is the original rhino.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
I think they're the.
Yeah, exactly. But when you put it all together, it all makes sense. It's a big puzzle that's all these pieces are putting together. But everyone's busy with their bread and circuses, and they don't want to look at this. And then they get this feeling of paralysis of how do we stop it? But you know, we really do need to go back to community and caring about our neighbors more than about ourselves and our pocketbook. I mean, when you hear elected legislators selling out because, oh, I'm in debt and it's good for my pocketbook and I could never make this much with a hay sale. Excuse me? What about our community? What about loving our neighbors? And really, this is we say we're in the Bible Belt, but what is happening in Oklahoma is straight up satanic. We are selling out our neighbors, and it's only for the good of ourselves. And the fact that it's happening here and that there's just crickets and nobody seems to care. And then I'm like, I keep telling people this is what this is what our ancestors left to come here, because the lords and the elites were lording it over the serfs, and we just serve them because we're not big landowners. And so what we have here are the big landowners that decided their property rights are more important than anyone else's right to health, to liberty, to happiness. And their property rights and their pocketbook, and these are legislators. My property rights, we're about property rights. I can do whatever I want as long as it's good for my pocketbook and my property. And then we think they're not doing that at the Capitol, because that's their philosophy. My power, my rights, my pocketbook. They're doing that.
That's what we saw with that's what we saw with Kevin Wallace. I mean, he literally said, I believe in property rights, which means I can do anything that I want on my property, you know,
right,
come hell or high water. So you're 100% right. It just quit being at all about your neighbor and everything about the cha-ching that's in, you know.
Right. Yeah. There are setbacks for a reason. And so you don't get to do something on your property that's going to harm your neighbor. I mean, I can't pile up a bunch of plastic and burn it, because that would be toxic to my neighbors and I would get called on and be reported. And so when these agencies, though, are sold out to these corporate interests, they're not going to come to our aid. We've seen that with the DEQ. We've seen that across the board. You know, the Corporation Commission, they're going to sit back and let them do whatever they want as long as we don't enforce it ourselves. We as people have got to replace these legislators and get people in there. And up to Governor Stitt, I mean, really, we want to be the all power everything, whether oil and gas, all of this. We want to be Oklahoma, all of the above. And do the people sign up for that? Did we vote on that? Did we decide we wanted to sell out rural Oklahoma so that when people drive through the state, they see miles and miles of transmission lines, miles and miles of solar panels? I mean, your AI image, which was AI, by the way.
It was.
But it was not accurate, because it should have been all solar panels. Like, what we don't even really comprehend how many solar panels they are planning for Oklahoma. Why else would they be putting a solar panel factory right outside of Tulsa? They're not doing it here so they can ship it to California.
Well, and that's the saddest thing too, because I was noticing, you know, with the carbon capture stuff, there are organizations in Oklahoma who are providing parts
Right.
for this, and you just kind of want to think to yourself, well, glad you're making money there, Chuckles.
Right. Yeah.
You know,
when you look at who they're supporting for legislature positions, and then you go, okay, what's your interest in this? Because it was never about, I like his morals, I believe in his biblical stance, I believe in his, it was never about his pro-life, whatever. It was about what it does for my pocketbook.
Yeah.
Every single time.
There's just, I mean, at this point, I think there's no question. And we see that really easily with our congressmen. You know, when you're looking at congressmen and the millions of dollars that they have in their war chests and who they, get donated to, big pharma being a huge one.
Right.
You know, and I think another thing, people don't understand this, and I do want to connect the dots on this because I know we're going to have to wind it up here pretty quickly, but I do want to connect the dots on this because people say to, well, what do I care? I don't have farmland. I don't really care what happens out there. It doesn't really make any difference to me. Oh, but it does. And I'll explain to you how it does. So I raise animals to eat on my property. Saundra, you raise animals to eat on your property. I know lots of people do what?
Milk, but yeah, we also
milk.
have
Yes.
Yeah.
So sorry. Well, you're not going to eat your donkeys. That's
Right.
correct. You raise milk. That would be kind of really gross. Okay. Anyway, so back to the message. So, people who raise food on their property, many have farms that are big enough to be able to provide corn to the market or provide beef to the market or whatever. These are small farmers, but there's a difference. So you have the independent farmers. I'm not going to say small farmers because some of them aren't small. Some of them are larger, but they're independent. And then you have corporate farms. Okay. Michael, you talked about Seaborg Farms out in Guyman, right?
Yep.
And how that changed the entire landscape of the town of Guyman, just getting a big corporate farm in there, right?
Mm-hmm.
So one of the things that's beautiful about God's creation is the heterogeneity in it, as opposed to everything being the same. God's creation is vastly different, runs from, mountains to big holes in the ground, from green stuff to blue stuff it's just extremely different. And one of the things that people who study about farming understand that a monoculture, or something that is just one particular type of anything, corn, for example, which happens a lot in the Midwest because of the fact that, and thank you, Stephanie, that's probably a better way to say it, diversity. Diversity is important. In the Midwest, there's been a huge problem with corn being grown as a monoculture because of the fact that they're getting ethanol kickbacks from the government, right? Again, it always goes back to money. There's never a time that it actually doesn't. And that's true, Lisa. All farmers used to be smaller, independent, a mere 150 years ago. That's pretty much all we had. It was the model. Yeah. So you've got corporate farms, big farms who are out here. Oh, and that's another good point, Stephanie. Monocultures deplete the nutrients in the soil, especially micronutrients, the things that plants need to grow, which is why diversity is so important. And the thing that we're being, hold on, I got a cough. Hang on just a second. I don't like doing it right into the microphone. One of the things that is happening is all these farmers, all these independent farmers are being pushed out because either They won't take money from the government, which means it makes it harder for them to do their jobs because, again, then they're competing against somebody who does get money from the government to do that, right? So they're having to compete with that farm. They're just getting driven out. And the whole idea is to drive out the independent farmers so that we can put everything into corporate farms. Because if we have corporate farms, then those are controllable. You can't control an independent farmer, but you can control a corporate farm. And you can tell the corporate farm, hey, we need to produce Soylent Green, because that's what we have to feed the population. So I was hoping you'd get that, Michael. So that's the whole idea behind all of this and why it affects you, because you have to eat.
Right.
You do. There's no way around it. You got to eat or you starve and then you die. So what we have to do... Stephanie says Oklahoma cremation laws. Right.
Right. Liquid cremation. But yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. But so that's the thing, is you have got to, even if you don't own land, even if you live in a suburb, even if you live in a little tiny place with 17 people around you, and you have just a 0 lot line home, you have got to be involved in this, because what's going to end up coming down is you will be regulated into what you eat. And if you don't think, we just talked about how horrible America is now and how all of the junk that they're trying to feed you. That's the whole idea. Make you sick, make you dependent on the health system, make you dependent on big pharma, which is which is why they get so much money. They get you dependent on those things, those, blood pressure medicines and this and that and the other thing. So I'm probably not doing a great job.
Let's go.
Stephanie's tried to help me here,
Yeah.
but
let's go. Well, Saundra, you chime in right after me. Let's go one step farther in the in the control mechanism here, Jenny, that you were just talking about. Okay, so you're talking about these farmers, moving in, things like that. Don't forget, there are these overarching global 2050 agendas, these large plans, these 15-minute city plans. Whether you want to believe it or not doesn't matter. These plans are in place to bring people into a congregated area for control. They don't want you out on the land. They want their people out on the land. They don't want you having your own business. They're going to give you the business that they want you to be in. They're going to feed you the food they want you to eat, the whole 9 yards. They're going to give you the medicine they want you to have. They're going to give you the healthcare. The whole deal comes down to consolidating people into manageable places to where you're not out free, independent, critical thinking people in one way or another.
Right. And that's where I think people, they'll say, well, they don't want to eat bugs. They're not. Well, no, they don't. And they won't. They'll still have their steak, but the people will be eating bugs because I mean, we've seen that with our farm. We didn't want to raise the price of our donkey milk because I know families need it who are already struggling financially. But when the price of our grain skyrockets and the price of the jars that we freeze it in skyrocket and the price of our hay skyrockets, what choice do we have? We have to go out of business or we have to raise our prices. So that's the same thing with your steak. If you want prime beef, you're going to have to pay prime prices. I mean, I've been at a medical conference and I have a type 1 diabetic daughter. And I met a doctor there who was doing cutting edge research on exosomes and selling exosomes to the US government. And he said, millions and millions of dollars of deals. And he said, you don't need surgery anymore. You blow your knee, we just shoot in these exosomes into it and you're back out on the field. And then he looks at me and I told him I have a type 1 diabetic daughter. He said, he showed me a picture of a kid with autism. Exosomes, now he's at like Yale. And then he says, well, I have 2 type 1 diabetic nieces. We gave them this many exosome injections and their diabetes is cured. And he said, you don't have much money, do you? And I said, no, we milk donkeys. Well, this is really expensive, like $15,000 a shot. And they needed that, like a lot of injections in order to cure the diabetes. And it's not FDA approved. So it's not something that you or I can go get. And then, you know, the way they're getting it, he said, in Ukraine, is these guys would go up to women and pat them on the stomach when they're pregnant and say, I'll give you $30,000 for your baby. Because the exosomes they're getting from the
fetal stem cells.
Right. And so it's like the precursor to the stem cells. It's the soup that the stem cells are grown in. That was how they short answered it to me, the non-scientist. But, you know, I asked him, are yours ethical? And he said, ours are ethical. They're from the placenta of only C-section babies that were donated, healthy pregnancies, because stressing them by an abortion changes the cell itself. So even, you know, the stress, I mean, it's just another example of they have the cures for these things. If you're wealthy enough to access them, they can cure your diabetes. They can cure your cancer, whatever. If you have the money to go pay for it, it's not going to be covered by your insurance. And I'm not a doctor. I'm just telling you, this was an experience that I had. And I'm telling you, they will still have their stake. And they will have all of the access to all of these different things that are cutting edge that they know about that we don't. And people will say I'm crazy, and that's fine. We all have to get past the point of caring what anyone says about us. I mean, yeah, you can call me crazy until you look back and say she was right. And so until we all work together and we all get busy and we all start making change, it's not going to change. And they will still have access to everything, and we will not. The common person that can't afford $15,000 an injection for 30 injections.
Well, I hope we made our case. I mean, I really do, because I know that there are people out there who legitimately can't draw a line from A to B, not because they're not smart enough, but because they just can't open their mind enough to think that somebody would want to harm them. I mean, I think that's the problem. I think that's the problem with a lot of Christians and why they don't get involved. They're like, well, it's kind of a several camp thing, you know, well, Jesus will take care of me, you know, number one. And then the other one is, you know, we love people. Nobody would do that kind of stuff to people. You have no idea. You have no idea of the depravity of the mind of a human being. This is the reason why we have Jesus, is because our minds are so depraved that without Jesus, we do literally horrible things and find absolutely unbelievable ways to harm our fellow man. So when you say to yourself, you know, I don't believe this, you know, nobody cares that much about doing that, you are dead wrong. You're dead wrong. There are people that want to harm you to elevate themselves, and they are doing it, and they will do it, and they want to do it because they don't care about you.
Right.
Believe it.
Yeah. Should we bring up the map of Oklahoma again?
Yes, let's do.
Just Oklahoma. I don't know if we zoomed in. Do you have the one?
Okay, hold on.
You can open.
Anyway, I just threw that on the screen there for a second to back up what Saundra said. That was one of the claimed Ukrainian stem cell therapists, doctors, and all that crazy stuff they do.
Oh, I missed that because I was doing something else at the time. All right, you just want to zoom in on Oklahoma. There it is. This one?
Yeah. And you can pull up the one I sent you that I emailed you, but
I can't, because I can't. It'll take me a few minutes to get it off my phone.
That's probably for the best. It'll freak people out. It's just when people start to realize this is 18 miles wide.
Yeah, it says 4 to 18 miles wide.
Right. So on
645 miles long.
And where it cuts off on the panhandle, that's where it gets the other one, plain southwest, and the whole rest of the panhandle is all covered.
There it is.
There you go. Yeah. So they consider us the flyover states. They don't care about us. We are just to be used for whatever resources they can suck from us. And they don't
But
think
that's very true, because if you look at the mountain south
Yeah.
northwest, they have one there, but it's very small
right. I think
compared
that
to
was,
what these are.
yeah, that one was 0.3 miles wide, which is more like a real transmission line corridor. So why are these so huge? Why, did they run out of the small Sharpie and had to switch to a big one? Maybe it's just insane. And that's what we can't grasp, is that there are people that are insane that are running things. So, yeah.
That's exactly right. And look at this. This is North Dakota, South Dakota, and Nebraska. It's just crazy. Then there's a whole other one through the Midwest plains. I mean, where are these going? And I had heard something the other day about the fact that these are all going to the Northeast, because the Northeast is so compacted in terms of, human, there are a lot more humans per space than there are out here. So we're having to generate this electricity and send it out to them. So that's what the Midwest is. I mean, the Midwest is like in Hunger Games. Remember, right?
Yeah.
The people outside of the city powered everything in the cities where all the masses of people were. And this is just Hunger Games. I mean,
Right.
there's nothing different here.
Yeah. Great analogy.
Yeah, there's nothing to
right.
see.
Mhm.
It's just the way it is. And here's something before we're probably going to have to wrap it up because it's 1:40. Transmission needs adverse effects on consumers. Maintain and improve reliability and resilience. So to them, creating a corridor of powerfully amperaged electricity that will change the electrical field surrounding anything that it's put near is reliable, is resilient.
Mhm.
And just like Dorn wrote in his letter, we have plenty of stuff underneath our feet. We already have 60% of the energy that we need to be, sustainable already, just, right under our feet. That is resilience. That is reliable. So I want you to think about what these people say. They use buzzwords that you're familiar with that would make you say, oh, okay, well, reliable. Okay. Oh, resilient. Yeah, we want to be resilient. So they use these stupid buzzwords and we buy into them instead of using the brain cells that God gave to us to rub together and go, well, wait a minute, that doesn't really make any sense. I mean, you're using the words, but the whole thing doesn't really add up and make sense. Alleviate congestion and reduce consumer costs. So let's go back here a second, or I guess it was forward. Alleviate congestion.
Yeah.
Alleviate congestion by congesting a lot of open farmland with a bunch of this stuff.
Well, and they
Again,
talk about tribal things and giving tribal power. I guess I don't understand, where are the tribes on this? Why aren't they pushing back? And if they are, why haven't we heard about it? Because what is the incentive that they're getting here that would create silence?
money. Could it be money? Because
Maybe
money will trump everything. Money will trump your health. Money will trump what you need to do for your fellow man. Money will trump what you need to do for your constituency. Money will trump all of these things, right?
Yeah.
Improve energy justice among tribal communities is what it says. So there's something called energy justice.
Right.
Energy justice. I command energy justice.
Right.
The
And
most ridiculous crap I've ever heard of.
Right. And I mean, you remember with 5G, how it's going to be super fast. Everything's going to be so fast. You're going to have super fast internet. Well, out in the country, everything got worse for us when they put in 5G. And so I'm like, what energy justice are we all, are there people out there living in the dark ages that I don't know about, that they don't have energy right now? Because this is all about AI. And that's what it's really all there for. I mean,
I think it's part of it, but I think Denise is right. It's also about the public-private partnerships
Oh, yeah.
between the feds and the cronies that just transferring
Right.
wealth. I mean,
it's a
that's
transfer of wealth. It is a
Yeah.
transfer. Of wealth. Absolutely.
absolutely.
Billions of dollars. Yeah.
Yeah. I really honestly do think most of this is a con.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's if you scare people, oh no, we're gonna die because of climate change, and you've got Greta Thunberg out there, you know,
Right.
screaming about whatever it is that she says, and that, you know, the voice that we can't really understand and that really doesn't match with a small girl. But anyway,
Yeah. And, you know,
yeah, I just think we've got to start, many tribes are also, I think you mean duped by their leadership. And I think that's exactly right. What are you doing there, Michael? Michael, you're looking
Hang on one
up
second.
stuff.
Before we get off, I want to
Okay.
show, I just want to back up Saundra again on one more thing. So I'm getting two things ready. I want to show an article, and then I want to show a short video, because I want people to understand that, like, when we say certain things, we're not just making stuff up. When we talk about these people that literally, like, want to destroy babies to further their own life, I'm going to show you video evidence of Peter Nygaard. You've probably never heard of this guy. This guy is one of the worst ever. He's one of these globalists. I want to show you. So I'm getting this queued up because I want you to see what they're saying to these girls, because they're trying to, you know, take their babies. They want to impregnate them and take their babies. They're going to pay them a whole bunch of money, just like what Saundra just said.
thank you.
So I have a video. It's about a minute long or so, but I'm also getting the article ready. So I want to show everybody that just to show that whether we believe that stuff or not, evil's out there. Evil does this stuff. Evil has no problem doing this stuff, whether we believe it or not.
Well, and don't forget, the whole job of evil is to make you buy that it's not evil.
Right. Yeah. And
Isn't that the whole job of evil?
There's steal, kill, and destroy. And this will destroy us and kill and steal from us. And so, you know, there's a few that will get rich and the rest will be destroyed.
Of course, it's all about killing the middle class is what this is. I loved this slide. I was telling Michael about the slide before we went on.
Oh, in the dark lines.
It looks creepy, doesn't it?
Yeah. And if you do drive out to like some of the areas where wind turbines are, drive out in the midst of them and you see empty farmhouses just abandoned.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so, yeah, it's corporate farming and they don't even need farmers to drive the tractors anymore. It can all be done by AI. They don't need us.
Yeah.
You had a video to back this up.
All right. You ready, Michael?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Okay. Go.
Okay, here we go. Here's one of these globalists that no one knows about yet. This guy exists. This guy's like a literal vampire. So this is just one article. I mean, you could type in Peter's name. You'll see all kinds of stuff. You can see his whole history, all this stuff. Here, he's asking his girlfriends to have abortions so he could use their fetuses for stem cell research to stay young. So you can watch the videos where he's on a table, you know, getting all this stuff. But this, at one point, Chris Hansen actually did a 12-part study or documentary on this guy. It's on YouTube. I would go watch it because Chris, I mean, even though I don't like Chris, he didn't pull any punches when it comes to Peter, because Peter is the absolute worst. So the only place I can actually find this video is, of all places, Alex Jones, you know, so go figure. But I'm going to play this and I want you to listen to what they say, how they're propositioning these girls. And then on top of that, watch these girls' reactions when they say, you know, they want their babies. They're going to pay for their fetuses. They're going to get them pregnant. And then they want to pay them, you know, to take their babies out prior to. Okay. Watch this. If I can get it to play.
It's going.
It's not going yet. Let me go
Uh-oh.
back.
Okay.
Let me go back. Now it should go. I don't know if you can hear it.
So, girls, for $100, we will pay you for your egg.
$100?
So, how much do you want for it? Let's bid. I bid $500 for you. Wherever I bid, he's going to outbid me. $60,000 for the eggs.
Here's Peter right there. $60,000 for the eggs.
That's very valuable. Umbilical cord, you know.
Look at this girl. Look at her.
Your period blood is so rich with stem cells. When we regard it as waste, then it actually should be. It should be captured as recycled, and it should go to waste. It's life for somebody else, and it's life for mankind.
Hey, boss. Notice how sick the women are about to vomit.
Yeah, there you go. That's the people we're dealing with here. Just because we don't see them, just because they're not on our news, doesn't mean these people aren't out there. They're out there. They have these plans. This is their white papers across the board, all over the place. These people are real. And unless we do things to stop these local things from happening, we're all going to transpire into their transhuman, agendas across the board. I mean, these things aren't crazy. These people are real. And look at these girls themselves. These girls know. They know in their heart that what these guys were propositioning was completely wrong. And
yeah, look at that girl's face. She was like,
credit. That's the only place you can get this video.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like he said, in that interview, like I said at the beginning, he's like, well, I don't know why you think that I'm crazy. I don't know why you think I'm a prophet. These people are out there. They say this stuff. I'm just going out there and telling you what they say.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, and let me say one more thing, Jenny. We do a lot of real heavy investing in our office here. So we see deals like 5 to 10 years before they really come to the public. And I've never said it on the show, but I probably told you before. So we saw the investment into the major cricket farms about 7-8 years ago. So that investment came to our office. We went through the whole presentation. We saw the whole 9 yards, and it's something we completely passed on. We didn't like it at all. Even as an investment, we didn't like it, but we didn't like the ethics side of it, with all the chitin and all the stuff that's involved in all the cricket protein. But I'll tell you what, when that plant, the set of plants that we were actually looking at the investment in, they came online about 4 years ago. And the very first run of the entire protein batch, the very first run was bought by Warren Buffett for all the dog food for his dog food companies that he has in Nebraska. So one of the main dog food companies up there, who I can't remember who it is or what, but he literally bought the entire first batch to go into the dog food rather than buying, animal-based protein to put into the food. So they're not going to tell you that. It's been in your dog and cat food now for several years. They're not going to tell you. They're just going to migrate right into your food without them telling you.
This is why you want to buy from local farms or, again, I've been raising food on my own since I was probably 20 years old. And it's not been a lot, but it's enough that at least we could live on something, if we had to. And anybody can do this. You could put a few fruit trees in your yard. You can do this. You can share with your neighbors, like Stephanie says, local.
Well, we have to band together because we are not part of the future plans of this country fast forward, not tomorrow, not a year from now. We're talking, 30, 40 years from now. They do not want us being around in the free individual capacity that we have now.
Right.
Well, and I'll tell you, I probably won't even be here by then, but my kids will. And if you can't think about the fact that you gave birth to people and you want them to have a good life, you're going to have to be able to think on that. Do I want the people I gave birth to have a good life? Well, if you do, you're going to have to get involved. I'm sorry,
Wow.
Saundra, what were you going to say?
Oh, yeah. I mean, basically, if you don't want to drink your own waste and eat crickets, you need to get involved. I mean, that's where this is going. And we really do have to just get to know our neighbors, and we need to get back to having community meals. And we talk about this stuff because for all we know, they're signing up wind turbines in your county right now, and solar and all of this stuff. I mean, these pipeline flags we're seeing, what kind of pipeline is that? They don't have to tell us. Is it carbon capture? Is it a carbon pipeline? What is it? And we need to all be very aware, and we need to be talking to our neighbors and loving our neighbors. I mean, when we're selling out because we want the payout, and when our legislators are selling out because they want the payout, we have to start holding them accountable to that. And when they start to realize we are holding them accountable, and we're not going to sit back and say, oh, you called us political animals, it's fine. No, it's not fine. Still waiting for an apology. That's not fine. You don't do that to the people. And we have got to start holding them accountable and stop making excuses for them for their bad behavior just because they have Republican in front of their name.
Well, and I think it's important to point out too, as we close out here, to build on what you said, there were some major turnovers in the House and Senate this last election cycle. Not small, major. The Senate pro tem elect got thrown out because people didn't want him. The head of the Appropriations and Budget Committee in the House got thrown out because people didn't want him. And he was doing deals in his community that bettered a few people and not everybody in the community. So there have been some major things that have gone on in Oklahoma this year. And the thing that's super important about saying that is, if you're going to sit here and tell me that what you do doesn't make a difference, I'm going to argue with you until you just want to pitch me off the side of a building, because it absolutely does make a difference for all of those people who are doing nothing and don't care. Those of us that do, once we get involved, we can and have and did make a difference this last election cycle. So do not, under any set of circumstances, go down that, but I can't do it. I'm not listening to any of that.
Right.
Knock it off.
Yeah. And if you love your neighbor, then you care about them. I care about this transmission line because these are our neighbors. I care about what's happening to Lincoln County now. I mean, they told me we don't dump human air anywhere around you now. Why? Maybe because I threw a big old fit, but they told me that. And I recorded that conversation, but they told me that, but I still care that human air is happening to my neighbors in Lincoln County because it's wrong and it's harming them. And so we're going to keep pounding the doorsteps of the Capitol and throwing a fit until they start paying attention to us. So this is the right thing to do.
It is.
So thank you guys for this podcast and for all that you do and you have done for years. I know it's a lot of work.
Well, I'm just glad that we now have, I'm glad that we have a network to be able to share this stuff. And I do, but again, it's up to you. We've lost quite a few on Rumble today, but we have still quite a few on all of our other channels. And guys, I just ask you from the bottom of my heart, please share this with your friends and your family. Please do that, because if you can't share it, then we don't grow. And if we don't grow, there's not enough of them to take them on. And if we don't take them on, we can't win. And by winning, I mean just have the level of freedom that we are supposed to have and are guaranteed to have under the Constitution of the United States. So please share. Please get this stuff out here. Saundra, I'll never be able to thank you enough for becoming a political animal and, alerting us to all of the stuff that's going on. I really, really do appreciate it so much.
Well, thank you.
Thanks for being with us today. I know we didn't go huge into the whole transmission corridor thing, but I think what we need to do more than anything, because I don't know how much we could really know. I mean, because they're only going to tell us what they want us to know anyway.
Right.
So I think we need to sit back on the fact that we're experts in our own backyards, and we need to make this stop, because we know it can't be good for any of us to have that many transmission lines over our head and to have our property usurped yet again and easements yet again and that kind of thing. One of the ladies that provided me with this webinar slide stack, she has a copy of the wind turbine contract that they did not sign. And I told her, I said, I think this is the other thing we need to do. We need to get these contracts out in front of people, because these people have, what do they call it? You're not allowed to tell people about it.
Non-disclosure.
NDAs, non-disclosure agreements.
Thank you. They all have non-disclosure agreements with them. And if they sign, then they're not allowed to say what's in the contract. So if you're going to get the contract and they're going to give you the contract, then the best thing to do is don't sign it and get out there, because sunshine is the best disinfectant. It always will be. And that's what we have to do, is get those out there so everybody can see. And the same lady was telling me last night when I was talking to her on the phone that what would happen is they would say something back to the wind turbine company, who would fix the contract exactly the way they want it and then send it back in. But she's convinced, because she's talked to other people, they'll do anything they want in this contract, but then they'll do anything that they want when they get access to your property.
Right.
So
and she just brought up the good neighbor contracts, and that's important. That's a misnomer. Good neighbor, you're giving up all your rights to protest or to sue. Once you sign that good neighbor contract, you just gave away all your rights to ever say anything and protest for what, $1,500 a year or something like that. I don't even know. I don't know what their numbers are up to now, but it's all a scam.
Well, yeah, and you have to think to yourself, again, we've got to start using reason and not emotion. Why would you want to sign a non-disclosure? Why would you have to have a non-disclosure? Does that not make the hair stand up on the back of your neck? Does that not make you think to yourself, well, something's not right here if I'm not allowed to tell anybody about it? Right?
Absolutely.
So guys, use your noggins. I mean, just use your noggins here. God gave you a noggin, and it's up there to use. Use it. All right. Before we get off of here, yeah. Again, if they don't want you to tell other people, then it probably can't be very good.
Right.
It's not a Mrs. Fields cookie, people. All right. Thank you so much for being with us again, Saundra. I'm sure we'll have you back on the show. Many times probably.
Great. I appreciate you all. Thank you.
All right. Take care, and we'll talk to you soon. I promise. And thanks for being with us. And thank you for alerting us to all of this.
Yeah.
Thank you. No, thanks
All
for
right.
helping me get it out there.
All
Thanks.
right. Talk to you soon.
Bye.
All right. Before we get off of here, I want to do just a couple of things that we haven't had a chance to do yet, and we'll close it out and move on. So we have something new on our website. Michael, did you know that?
No.
You didn't? Well, let me tell you all about this. We have a new writer with Rope, and he is going to be writing some things for us. We're very super happy to have him. His name is Shane Smith, and his first post went viral. Imagine that.
No. Great.
I know. Here's Shane's first post. Norman School to teach elementary students to identify misinformation.
Well, there you go. Start them young, Jenny.
For those of you who do not know, librarians, this is a national movement. Shane's going to write some more about it after this one. It's a national movement to get librarians to provide a curriculum to students to be able to teach them about what is and isn't misinformation. Now, I want to point out, this is elementary school. How do you propagandize people? You get them as early as you can, as young as they are. That's how you get them. That's how we make propaganda work. So if you don't think this is propaganda on some stretch of the imagination, you've got to be a little crazy. It's propaganda. They're pushing it into elementary schools. It's not just Norman, it's other schools, but our writer Shane, he has kids in Norman public schools. And so this is where he found out about it. So I want you guys to welcome Shane. We welcome Shane. We're happy to have him. I've prayed numerous times for another writer to come on board. And I'm just happy as heck to have him because it takes a little bit off of me. And after all, it's all about me.
Yeah. Well, and that's in good old red state, 100% red county, Oklahoma, Bible Belt, America.
Yep. Then there's one more thing I wanted to bring in before we get off of here too. For those of you who are following my lawsuit with the Oklahoma State Election Board, you might be interested, like I was, in this particular thing that I saw yesterday. This is the judge in my case, actually. I have a First Amendment case. This is a federal judge. He actually ruled, federal judge issues restraining order requested by KFOR against Ryan Walters' spokesman. So those of you who love Ryan Walters and will anybody saying anything bad about him, then you better close your ears or sign off. And I'm not a down on Walters guy either. I'm just one that wants to be fair about everything. If you have a public meeting, you have to let the public in. That's the end result. So I don't care who it is. I don't care if it's Ryan Walters. I don't care if it's George Kaiser. I don't care who it is. If you have a public meeting, you have to let the public in. And unfortunately, whether you like it or not, the media is part of the public. And I thought this was a very interesting little paragraph here. This was a statement that was issued by the judge when he granted the stopped the restraining order in on behalf of K4. News gathering is the lifeblood of free speech, the essential precursor to the dissemination of information and ideas that the public needs to form opinions, participate in the democratic process, and hold those in power accountable. Jones, the judge, wrote. Greenlighting a governmental attempt to restrict access to a limited public forum based on its unilateral determination that a news organization's reporting is factually untrue amounts to an unworkable standard. Such a standard, indeed, would empower the government to act as the final arbiter of truth, chilling investigative journalism and suppressing dissenting viewpoints. I'm taking that as a really great thing because this, again, is the judge in my case.
Yeah.
My case is a free speech case. You can't fire me because I told what was going on that you were doing. So I thought that was really great ruling, something to really, kind of sink your teeth into. I'm sorry that Ryan had to push that to the point where this had to happen. But if it's a public meeting, the public is welcome. End of discussion. So those are the only two things I have. Anything else that you have to close out?
Now I'm going to read just a sentence here from Congress, July 4th, 1776. We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal and that they're endowed by their creator with certain unalienable rights. That among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. There we go.
We either have a constitution or we don't. And if
Yeah.
we have a constitution, we damn well better be following it. And if
Yeah.
the people who are in charge of us, because we elected them and put them there, don't want to believe that, then it's our job to take back our liberty, remove them, and install people who will.
That's right. All these people work for us, not the other way around.
Absolutely. Michael, I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful weekend ahead. It's going to be absolutely beautiful weather, for Pete's sakes. I'm so excited about that.
Yeah.
I won't be doing any farm chores, though, this weekend, but that's okay. We'll catch up later. All right, everybody. Thank you so much, all of you who stayed on with us as long as you did. Again, share. Stand up. Take it back. Have a great weekend.
Thanks.